Some people who write poetry believe that there is something pure and special about a poem when it comes out all in a rush of inspiration. And they think that tinkering with or trying to improve, revise that poem is going to spoil it, that it's somehow wrong. I know people think that way because there was a time when I thought that way. And I loved almost everything I wrote. And one of my better professors once referred to most of it as sophomoric drivel. And, well, a few years later, turns out he was right. Now, I probably had to go through drivel to learn to write better. But the important thing was learning that that inspired rush doesn't create a pure poem. It creates an immature poem. It's a poem looking to grow. Because a poem, and I think most art, is an organic thing. It may not have a life on its own, but it does have a life within us and between us. It's a symbiotic relationship between us, the poem, the reader, all working back and forth. And you owe it to yourself and to your poetry to seek growth. And that does mean revising. You may have to give up that, seemingly marvelous and cute idea that you came up with. And what you come up with may not be better. Oh, you're going to write a lot of crap. If you don't write a lot of crap, you're never going to write anything good. So you get down to work with it. A lot of ways to approach that. But there's one that I found, it's a simple method, but it forces you to see the poem more closely. It forces you to see words and structure. And quite often when we get dominated by the structure, trying to work with a particular form or rhyme. Now this is a simple idea, simply looking at the last word of a line. Trying to make sure that the last word on each line is a strong word, a key word. So you start playing with line breaks. Look at how it affects the meaning. Because as you start to notice that, it will change your ideas. And that's part of the game. You really don't want to end up the same place where you started. You want a poem to change you, even as you change the poem. So consider a line I've been tinkering with. It's not an overly impressive line, and I'm not sure I will ever manage to create a good poem from it, but we'll work with it anyway. That is not the moon I remember. It's a very simple line. Has that somewhat nostalgic feeling that you might expect from somebody with a gray beard. Now what happens though if we simply change the line break and we write it in this form? That is not the moon I remember. Okay, so now we've got moon at the end of the line. There's no change in the meaning, and there's no change in the rhythm. That line should be read just the same way because there's no punctuation at the end of the first line. However, the mind is going to insert a mental or visual pause there. And it's going to say, that is not the moon. Say, what? If it's not the moon, what is it? That I remember. Ah, okay. Now you've got the original meaning that you got when you had all of that on one line. But you still have that initial reaction. The mind going, what? You created a certain doubt, a certain questioning. And that can be good because it means the reader's brain is more active. It's not just taking things in, it's actually interacting with the ideas. It's rather like a song that has a little extra rhythm, a little extra beat in the background. You probably don't even notice it unless you really listen closely. But if you take it out, the song isn't nearly as good. It lacks depth. And now that we're playing and loosening up ideas, what happens if we put a period at the end of that line? That is not the moon. Stop. Okay, now we're back to that question, if it's not the moon, what is it? But we're forcing ourselves to answer the question this time. That is not the moon. I remember something other. I remember younger nights. Still nostalgic, and I think kind of leaning back towards the drivel, but still opening up possibilities. What if we make it absolute in a different way? That is not the moon. No, not the moon I remember. I kind of like it. Has possibilities. I'm not sure where I would go from there. Something I would have to give a little more thought than I can give while sitting here doing a video. But possibilities. My brain is engaged with my brain. I'm interacting with my own writing. The brain comes up with words, the words go back into the brain. You get a nice cyclical activity going there. Your poetry changes, you change. You grow. Without problems? No. Growth spurts always cause problems. We've all been there. But you're growing, and that's important because we really, we fear change, I'll admit it. But we also desire change. We fear stagnation. Sometimes we want the comfort of stagnation. So we're left with the interplay between chaos and order. That's where creation exists. It's where thinking exists. It's the same as when you were a kid playing with blocks. And you would build yourself a nice tower, and if it didn't fall down on its own, you'd knock it down. Because you couldn't start building another one until you knocked down the first one. Unless you had a whole lot of space and a whole lot of blocks. So, okay, you're going back to your childhood a bit. The words are your blocks, the ideas are your blocks. And that's why it's really important to, maybe keep a little bit of the immaturity. That part that allows us to play. And the maturity that allows us to learn from that play. That's what it's about with the blocks. That's what it's about with the words. So have some fun.